Let's apply this to a hypothetical athlete. We have a 30-year-old male, 10 years of training, unremarkable injury history. This gentleman has been on lockdown for 2 months. Okay. Prior training, before the lockdown, was 4 times a week. We had the first day was a push arms. Next day is lower pull, upper arms, lower pull. Okay. So that upper arms is pretty much the same as the push arms, but we'll see how it changes as we move forward. Okay, so day 1, push arms with a horizontal press focus. So start with a barbell bench, 5 sets of about 6 to 10, incline dumbbell press, 4 sets about 8 to 12, dumbbell overhead press, lateral raise, and then we got a superset of dumbbell curls and triceps, and then another superset, preacher curl and triceps, another superset of hammer curl and overhead cable triceps. Day 2 is the lower pull day with a squat focus. So we start with squats, RDLs, hip thrust, superset with a row, leg press, superset with a pull down, leg extension, leg curl, straight arm pull down, one after the other, and then calf press and a row. Okay, so you can see that the squat focus and the horizontal press focus, this is the previous slide, that first movement is more of the heavy work, right? That bench is somewhat heavy, and then that squat is somewhat heavy. All right, and then so day 3 is going to be that second push arms day with an overhead press focus. So the landmine press now is what's the heavy movement, right? Machine lateral raise, superset with machine reverse fly, machine chest press, and now the chest exercises are a bit higher reps, right? So the overhead press focus day starts with a heavier shoulders, lighter chest, and the first push day was heavier chest, lighter shoulders, and then we move into the incline dumbbell press, and then those same supersets with arms. The second lower pull day is a hinge focus, so the RDL is the main movement there, and the heavier movement. Then we move into the leg press with a pull down, leg extension, leg curl, chest support, a row, just like the other day. And then we have, wide lat pull downs and unilateral cable rows. So that is the prior training. During the lockdown, this is what the training turned into. So that first day with the bench focus, now we're doing a feet elevated push-up, 5 sets to failure. We're doing a band crossover, right? So like the band is anchored on a certain point, and we're doing like a unilateral fly. We're doing a lateral raise superset with a dumbbell overhead press. The idea being that this person doesn't have access to heavy enough weights in their home to do an overhead press fresh, because it just wouldn't be heavy enough. So we're going to superset the lateral raise with the overhead press. This way we pre-fatigue the shoulders and we get some kind of, fatigue with an overhead press. And then the arms supersets turned into a band curl with a close grip push-up, a chin-up, like a biceps-focused chin-up with a band press down, and then a banded hammer curl with an overhead band extension. The lower day was modified to goblet squat, 5 sets to failure, a Nordic hamstring curl, 4 sets to failure, hip thrust with inverted row, split squat with a wide pull-up, and a calf raise for 4 sets to failure. The modified push arms the second day with the overhead press focus started with that pre-fatigue lateral raise dumbbell overhead press and move right into the feet elevated push-up, that banded crossover, and then that same superset for arms. And the second lower day, start with the goblet squat, right? Nordic hamstring curl, hip thrust, inverted row, split squat, pull up, calf raise. So this person had no way of of doing a loaded hinge, right? Didn't have a barbell, didn't have heavy enough weights to really get much benefit out of a Romanian deadlift or any kind of deadlift version. So what they did was they just threw in another leg focused day. Okay, so gyms open up. Where do we go? Here's what we're going to do. The first week that we get back following the modified training, we're going to do 4 days a week because that was the frequency they were doing before the lockdown and the frequency they were doing during the lockdown. So we'll keep that consistent. The main lifts, we're going to keep an RPE of 5 to 6 for 2 sets of 6, followed by a single, 1 set of 1, okay? And we're going to work up from the bar. So day 1 is going to be chest press and accessory work. Day 2 is going to be squat and accessory work. Day 3 is going to be overhead press and accessory work. Day 4 is going to be deadlift and accessory work. So how do we change that? We lowered the RPE, we lowered the sets and reps, and we took out the dual muscle groups in the days. So we're just doing a chest press with accessory. We're just doing squat. We're just doing overhead press, just doing deadlift with accessory work after that, rather than chest. All right. So it's just that kind of focus for those days. Day 1. Like we said, RPE 5 or 6. The barbell bench, we're doing 2 sets of 6, followed by that single. And the weight will be determined kind of by the RPE, right? So I don't like going with percentages of what you were doing before because we're trying to find where you are now. And that's going to help us determine where we're going next. So I don't really like to take a percentage of what you were doing. We'll say we'll use RPE kind of as our guide here and let the weights kind of settle in themselves, and we'll constantly audit how we feel and we'll go from there. So we'll start with the barbell bench, 2 sets of 6, followed by the single at an RPE 5 or 6. The lateral raise is going to be superset with the machine fly, reverse fly, which is a familiar superset to what we were doing before. And we're going to do 3 sets of that, of 8 to 12. And a biceps triceps superset for 2 sets of about 8 to 12. Much less volume than we were doing, but we're hitting all of the same things, right? We're hitting all of the same things. We're hitting a press, we're hitting shoulders, and we're hitting arms. So we're doing all of that because we were doing it prior. We were doing it during the modifications, and now we want to do it after, but we're just going to modify it. Okay, so I'm not going to throw out the shoulders and the arms and only do bench because we were doing that during our modification, right? So a little bit different if we took time completely off, like we said before, but because we had a bit of structure during the modified training, we're going to kind of keep that structure. We're going to keep that frequency, right, 4 times per week, and we're going to keep hitting all those muscle groups together, but just modifying it. Day 2 is the lower pull day with the squat focus. Again, squat, RPE 5 or 6, 2 sets of 6, working up to that single. And then we're going to do leg press with a lat pull down for 2 sets, leg extension, leg curl, and row for 2 sets, right? That little cluster of sets there. And then the calf press, okay? Day 3, we're going to start with the landmine press. So again, RPE 5 or 6, 2 sets of 6, working up to that single. Machine lateral raise with the reverse fly, and then biceps, triceps. Okay, now the hinge focus, again, RPE 5 or 6. RDL, we're going to do 2 sets of 6 and that 1 set of 1. Now we want to keep in mind that we haven't been doing RDLs in our modified training, right? We haven't been doing a hinge movement. So we want to keep that in mind. That's one of the things I would say to this person is just make sure that we're doing okay, the day after you train RDLs, because we can always modify that more if we have to. but I'm going to say that this person is, they've been training for, 10 years, right? I'm going to say that they would be able to tolerate going back into RDLs at this low RPE and low volume. And then again, the accessory work is similar to the first day. So the first progression that I would do is so long as all the boxes of recovery are checked, right? Just like we talked about throughout the presentation. As long as every box is checked and we're doing good, feeling good, I would increase the RPE to 7 and increase that load accordingly to hit the desired reps, okay? Volume is going to stay the same. Exercise is going to stay the same. We're just pushing it up to an RPE 7 and increasing the weights to accommodate. After that, if all the boxes are checked, again, everything is checked off, we're going to add 1 set on the main lifts and the accessory lifts. Increase the reps from 6 to the prior rep range that we were doing. Increase the RPE on the accessory movements to 9 on the last set, okay? So we're going to push it a little bit now with our isolation work and just kind of get a feel what that feels like to approach that muscle fatigue and approach failure again in a controlled environment like an isolation exercise. Then we're going to increase the load on those singles, right? That 1 set of 1, increase the load at RPE to 6 or 7. Other than that, RPE stays the same on the main lifts, okay? So on that single, on that last set, 1 set of 1, increase the RPE to 6 or 7 and the load accordingly. Otherwise, those are staying the same. All right, so keep progressing as tolerated. I gave you a bit of an outline how to get started with some progressions, but from then on, it's going to depend on how the person is responding. And when I say depend on, it's not just saying, oh, it depends, right? It's saying it depends on how the person is progressing, how they're feeling, what they were doing prior, what they were doing during the lockdown, their training age, how they're feeling, right? All these different things that we talked about already are going to determine where we go from here. Remember the timeline, right? Remember the timeline that it may take about as long as the layoff to get back to it, but it may be shorter. It may be shorter than that because this person was training during the lockdown, right? So that's important. Focus on the long-term career, right? Help this person realize, I know that you're doing RPE 5 on squats. I get it. I understand that feels like nothing. But we're talking about the long term here. And it's only going to help you, right? Be honest. We have to be honest with ourselves because we're only fooling ourselves and we're only hurting ourselves if we're not honestly auditing our response. If you go in there and you have in your mind that you want to do RPE 5 or 6, you get under that bar and then you see someone next to you who's pushing it, or you saw a commercial for a Rocky movie that was going to be on later in the day, and that little voice inside you wants to push it, right? That little high school football player in you again wants to push it. You have to have the self-control to understand that there's a greater purpose to all this. And an injury is only going to set you back more. Ramping this up slowly is not going to set you back. Having an injury will very well set you back in your long-term career. When in doubt, take your time. Don't rush. No need to rush this, okay? Like we said, even if we undershoot for the first 2 or 3 weeks, even if we undershoot, we're still getting that protective mechanism from the repeated bout effect, okay? So even if it is too easy, we're still building up our preparation for when we go harder, right? So there's nothing bad that can happen from going too slow. I'd rather that than push it too far and overload our capacity to recover push that envelope of function to the red zone, right? Make sure we do this gradually. Always better to undershoot. My final comments, don't stress. Like we talked about in the beginning, there are people around the world going through one of the most awful times in the history of the world. You yourself may have someone who is affected by this. A family member, a loved one, a friend. My heart goes out to you. You may have lost your job, right? You may not be getting a paycheck. You may not know how you're going to pay your mortgage or pay your rent or pay for groceries. Those are the things that you should be thinking about, right? Those are the things. Training is not that high up on the totem pole. And I understand that it's part of our lives. It's the anchor to our lives. It's the anchor to our physical and mental health. I totally understand that. But understand, and hopefully through this presentation, I have been able to relay the message that even at its worst, it's not that bad when it comes to losing what you've gained, okay? So at least rest your head at night knowing that what you've built up over the years is not in danger of getting lost because of this, okay? Use this as a unique opportunity to force an internal audit of yourself and your training and embrace that innovation, right? That we talked about before. This is a crazy time. When have you ever had to do walking lunges around your block to failure? When would you ever do that, right? Never. When would you have to do Bulgarian split squats while holding your daughter in your arms or holding a case of water? Like it's so cool to me to think that so many of us out there and so many of you out there are finding cool and innovative ways to train and sharing it all with the community. I think that's so cool, and I think it's a way that we're all getting brought together by this, in the strength world. Reflect on what you've learned, right? Reflect on what you learned about your body since training at home. It's one of the things, like we talked about before, that I like to instill in my patients. Injury is time for learning and improving and becoming more resilient, right? You get stronger and more and increase your mental and emotional resiliency through injury, right? Because you have to modify your training. You have to find different ways to move. You get to feel you're thinking more internally about how you're feeling, right? You don't strengthen a relationship with a significant other during the good times. I mean, you may, but it's the bad times, it's the hard times, it's the struggles with your significant other where it forces you to sit down and have those uncomfortable conversations. And then those things get brought up that you didn't even know were bothering you and were fueling your argumentative state, right? Those are the things, those hard conversations, that internal reflection and finding those things about yourself. With an injury, that internal thinking and finding ways to modify, those things are what makes you more resilient moving forward. I can promise you that. You will come out of this thing stronger mentally and maybe physically, if you look at the studies, than before, okay? So use this as a great opportunity to reflect on everything that you've learned and give yourself a pat on the back because you lived through and trained through one of the worst and craziest times that our planet has ever seen. If you do get injured or you do feel pain as you get back to the gym, it's okay. It is okay. Injuries happen. Pain happens. Pain is like hunger or thirst. It's just a sensation that we feel, right? It doesn't always mean damage. It doesn't always mean that you did something wrong. So don't be too hard on yourself if you do have pain or if you do suffer an injury. Things happen, right? Don't think that it's the end, right? Don't think that there's you got an injury, you did something wrong, and you're worthless, and now the gyms are open and you're stuck at home again. Totally fine. It's totally fine. We can always find ways to work around different things, but that's where, a consult with a medical professional or physical therapist will come in. But don't get discouraged if you do get hurt. These things happen. Doesn't necessarily mean you did something wrong. Go slowly. You're going to progress quickly, and you're going to want to progress quickly. Like we said, that increased sensitivity to training is going to make you feel great, right? Almost like a newbie again, or like we used the caffeine example before, right? You're going to make progress. I can promise you that. Just take it slowly. You're going to make the progress. And trust the process, right? Trust the process. Love the journey. And focus on longevity. Focus on the long-term career, not what's happening today. Think about what's happening down the road and look at your career in the long term, right? Everyone listening to this wants to be in it for the long game, right? I want to be doing this stuff until I'm in my 90s. And just like everyone else watching this, so this is nothing but a blip. I can promise you that. This is nothing but a blip. And we all have fruitful, long-term careers ahead of us. I can promise you that. So just to give you an idea of some places to look for some more, information about this stuff, we have the video here from Mike Zerdos that I talked about before. Mass just released this for free on YouTube, so be sure to check that link out. We at 3D Muscle Journey did a podcast, Alberto, Eric, and myself, about coming back from a layoff, coming back from quarantine. And then Eric was on the Hypertrophy Hub podcast talking about this stuff as well. So be sure to check those out. They're free. And I think they're very beneficial if you want to kind of look more into this stuff. That's not my reference list, right? These are all the references. So if anyone has any questions about these references, please feel free to reach out. I kind of bolded the ones here from Mass. If you're not already, be sure to subscribe to Mass. It's invaluable. All right. So contact information, if you want to reach out to me, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them, okay? You can even leave a comment, and I'll get back to you. You can go to 3dmusclejourney.com, right? Just like it's written there, 3, the letter D, musclejourney.com. And my website for my personal website is strengthtogetheronline.com. And my email is nick@strengthtogetheronline.com. And my Instagram is @nicklicmelli. So just want to thank everybody for watching. If you watched till the end, I appreciate it. I absolutely loved presenting this information. And I want to thank you for your time. I hope it helped. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.